Mono red aggro versus mono blue aggro.
Played a little bit of these decks pre-rotation. Haven't had a chance to touch this one. I know that Jadine Klumperen's actually selected this deck in the What We Would Play column over on StarCityGames.com.
And if you blink, you're going to miss this game. Rudy, turn 1. Fanatical Firebrand swings in for 1.
Fanatical Firebrand generally quite good against the Curious Obsession deck. Have Siren Stormtabers. This is a build that's a little bit more Merfolk heavy. It has Silvergill Adepts and River Sneaks. So that's going to be a slightly different build of the deck.
And we will see an attempt here at Runaway Steamkin from Rudy, and that's going to work.
Yeah, no action from Hall just yet. If he doesn't have a Tempest Djinn this turn, I think that his deck really just isn't doing anything.
Why no Firebrand swing on Rudy's side?
He wants to leave it up in the case of some creature showing up, like a Siren Storm Tamer. Make sure you can get it. Though it is notable that the way to pump it outside of range is Curious Obsession, which if you don't attack, the aura just falls off. So I think that the attack was just good.
So Runaway Steamkin will put a counter on Runaway Steamkin for Rudy. And it looks like we're going to have a counter spell, the Wizard's Retort. Counter still gets placed, though. And with a tap down there, now Rudy will push the damage. Here's 3 across. Tim Hall down to 16. During our last team open, right when Dominaria came out, remember, Rudy was on the winning team.
Yep.
In the standard seat with blue-white. Tempest Djinn, the play from Timothy for 3. All islands. That's going to be a pretty powerful card here.
Bad news, though, is that Hall just has a couple more islands in his hand and only one other spell.
Viashino Pyromancer pumps the Runaway Flamekin. It's a 3/3. It's going to swing.
Ooh, I like this attack a lot.
Yeah, so it's a 3. Tell me more.
So he's attacking with the 3/3. Any red spell just turns it into a 4/4, in which case it just trades with the Djinn in combat. It looks like it might be a bluff, which is the best part, and it's just not. He has Shock, and I want to say Wizard's Lightning in hand as well.
Well, on the table, it's already 3 damage, and the Fanatical Firebrand could finish it off. Right now, it's a 4/4. So, and now we will see Shock upstairs before damage, and then 4 coming in. So Tim will take the Shock, go to 14, take the hit, go to 10.
And it looks like Wizard's Lightning risk factor the leftovers in Rudy's hand, and with Hall at 8, that risk factor is looking mighty strong.
Yeah. Make that, yeah, down to 8.
I might even just Steamkin that after damage here.
Sure.
It is an instant, so you can just do that on Hall's end step. Though he was tapped out off of having another Wizard's Retort.
I guess if it's an instant, timing-wise, you can do this play whenever you'd like, really.
Right.
You know, you can cast the risk factor, end step, main phase, next turn. It's all the same.
Yeah, the one difference being that the 3 mana was tapped on Hall's side.
Oh, okay. Yeah, to avoid the counterspell. Absolutely.
And here's one that's in this list you don't usually see in this list. Naban, Dean of Interaction. Explicitly couples, he has 4 copies of Silvergill Adept and 4 copies of Exclusion Mage.
Yeah, the Dean of Iteration, he's going to be whenever a wizard entering the battlefield under your control causes a triggered ability to trigger, it triggers twice. Now, with this on stack, we're going to see Risk Factor from Rudy. Counter attempting to be placed on the Steamkin. Rudy will get 3 cards or 4 damage.
Or a counter spell.
I feel like you got it. If you can counter it, it's hard to not counter here.
Yeah, from 8, you really don't want either of these effects going off. Looks like he chose to take 4.
Okay. And then we are going to see... Is that Water Trap Weaver?
Yep, 1 copy in the deck.
So this is the Frostlink style effect. It's going to tap 2 things. Naban was hit by the Fanatical Firebrand with that on the stack, so only 1 creature taps down, and Tempest Djinn will swing for 5.
I like that aggression from Hall. He knows that Rudy has a lot of top decks that just close the game from here, so you want to try to close with the Tempest Djinn if at all possible.
Well, he gets to jumpstart Risk Factor, and this one's pretty easy. He's going to get to draw 3 cards.
Yeah, not choose to just lose the game.
Fanatical Firebrand and Wizard's Lightning in Rudy's hand. So, Wizard's Lightning deals 3. Wizard's Lightning is the game. 1-0. Rudy Briksza currently up.
Yeah, Hall just really needs faster starts, and he has some fancy elements of his version of the deck, the Naban plus Silvergill Adept package, though I think that makes you quite a bit worse in a matchup like this, as opposed to the build that's just playing more one-mana creatures.
Well, this deck, it feels to me, Ryan, like why would you choose to play a mono blue aggro deck? It's because this should be pretty good against control. But in this kind of matchup, I think Timothy's just operating from behind.
Yeah, certainly buy that. As he goes to his sideboard, let's see if we can get any help. 3 Negate, 2 Selective Snare, 2 Silent Gravestone, 2 Sorceress Spyglass, 2 Spell Pierce, a Diamond Mare, an Essence Scatter, a Naru Miha Master Wizard, and a Seafloor Oracle. The only card that really stands out here is that 1 Diamond Mare. You kind of wish he had more copies, to be entirely honest.
Yeah, it's a 1/3. You choose a color. When you cast a spell the color, you gain a life. Gaining life seems great.
Yep.
Yeah, there's not too much else I like here, to be totally honest.
Yeah, stuff like Selective Snare is not good in this matchup because a lot of Rudy stuff like Viashino Pyromancer and Fanatical Firebrand just are naturally insulated against bounce spells. One having an ETB trigger, the other one just having haste, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You can bounce Runaway Steamkin, but I don't really want to go heavy on that kind of effect.
Yeah, there is not much here. You'd be looking, sometimes blue gets these effects that just tap down a red or green creature, something like that. The kind of Tidebinder Mage effect. I don't think we encase in ice. We don't have much in standard that does that right now.
Right.
And normally you'd see that in the sideboard for something like this, but I don't think he has options.
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff that just plays against very specific other things. So the Diamond Mare is really the only card there paying respect to the red deck.
That much makes sense. Over on StarCityGames.com, we have our weekly sale. We're wrapping it up this weekend before we move on to next sale. So if you haven't checked it out yet, right now we have some big savings on select sealed products and supplies. So boosters, boxes, sleeves, even dual decks, like dual decks, Chain Whirler versus Tempest Djinn. Give your friend the Tempest Djinn deck. That's going on all weekend. And so make sure to check that out and then come stop by on Monday morning when we have next week's weekly sale.
I like playing those dual decks a good amount. They're pretty fun. And over for the sideboard for Rudy, who is currently up a game, we have 3 Fight with Fire, 3 Lava Coil, 2 Fiery Cannonade, 2 Legion Warboss, 2 Rekindling Phoenix, a Banefire, a Mountain, and a Risk Factor. This pinpoint removal that kills Tempest Djinn is pretty strong. The Fight with Fire is the Lava Coils, and they also wrap up whatever else is in the deck, even if a Curious Obsession is played on it.
I like Lava Coil for that reason. I don't know if Rudy wants to board in all 6. That feels like a lot here. I don't think this is the kind of matchup where he's ever going to kick a Fight with Fire. So in that sense, I don't know. I don't know how much I like the Fight with Fire.
Yeah, on the draw, I'd be more inclined to go on a heavier number just because there's more games where Tempest Djinn does just run you over.
Okay.
That's more of a concern. You're right, it is heavy to go on this type of removals.
Do you think Rudy moves away from cards like Fanatical Firebrand or some of his cheap things to go for removal, or you still want all those threats?
Fanatical Firebrand just cleanly trades with a lot of the creatures in Hall's deck, so I'd probably keep that in, especially after seeing the Bond. There's something going on there, right?
Yeah. Over on the modern table, Kyle Boggemes takes game 1 as well. That's Jeskai Control versus Grixis Shadow. Timothy going to be on the play here. Yeah, the difference is that I think in this matchup, is we look at this removal where Rudy's going to board in these Lava Coils. Timothy just can't do that. He doesn't have removal.
No, he has very little in the way of effective sideboard cards. This deck, Standard did get quite a bit powered down with rotation. That kind of happens when you cut 4 sets and only add 1.
It makes sense.
But this deck, pre-rotation, one of the things that was actually a draw to it was Brawl, Chief of Compliance. Because you could combine that with Wizard's Retort. Just it's a wizard, it reduces the cost, but you also got to loot when you countered a spell with that. so you could get rid of extra lands, which is a deck with a bunch of very cheap creatures where getting flooded is very punishing. You also got a discount on Blink of an Eye, which helped you in a lot of spots with this deck, whereas Blink of an Eye is not really playable without Brawl in the deck, and you don't see Timothy playing any copies.
I mean, I really agree. The front thing is Timothy's deck, you look at some of these cards, Siren Storm Tamer, River Sneak, Exclusion Mage, Curious Obsession, Water Trap Weaver. These are some pretty low-powered cards. You really need some powerful interactions between them for that to happen. And while some of them exist, it's not, drawing a card off Silverguard Adept is good. Naban can be good, but I don't know, there's a lot, I think.
Well, that's another big draw of Baral is you got discounted Charta Courses.
Yeah.
So you got to attack Baral, Charta Course for 1 mana, drawing 2 cards. That was a big deal. That could give you value that would really snowball. And Hall's trying to preserve that element by going with this Silverguard Adept plan. The problem is it's just a bunch of 1 toughness creatures and cards that aren't very good on their own.
Timothy Hall on the mulligan here. So for Rudy Briksza, you see at the shirt, a former Players Championship competitor. He's got 3 open wins in 9 top 8s. Recently did have that team open win right on Dominaria release weekend. You might have heard him as a weekly podcast with Brad Carpenter and Tannen Grace as well. A lot of times, this is actually a bit of a deviation for Rudy's playstyle. I think kind of made his name on the SCG Tour playing decks like 4-color Deathblade and Legacy, was frequently the Grixis twin player in Modern at the time when he was on the Players Championship.
Yeah, played some mid-range decks in Standard, liked casting dragons.
Yeah, I always, where I'd guess what he's playing, what I would say is take a really good 2 to 3 color fair deck and then add an extra color to it, and that's probably what Rudy's on.
Yeah, well, his most recent team win also, he was playing Teferi Control in Standard.
And there's that one of Diamond Mare out of the sideboard for Timothy Hall. We have the Runaway Steamkin from Rudy. Hall's on a 6-card hand right now. So Exclusion Mage will bounce the Steamkin, Hall will gain a life, and he'll chip in for 1.
Diamond Mare is a card that a lot of the red decks are playing in their sideboard as well, and something about it is the mono red aggro deck plays 8 cards in the main deck that cleanly answer Diamond Mare. You get Wizard's Lightning and Lightning Strike, and Rudy's boarding in Lava Coils and Fight with Fires. And as a baseline, it's just a spell that gains life in the first place.
Well, here's Curious Obsession and a swing in, and I like this. That 4th point of toughness could matter. Timothy will gain a life point. And now he'll get to draw a card unless Rudy wants to chump block.
Well, I think that Rudy brought another card from his sideboard. Rekindling Phoenix is in the hand, and that's really good at blocking 2/4s.
Yeah.
That one's a fine one to bring in because of Tempest Djinn just by itself.
There was a potential for Rudy to play Shock there and trade 2 for 2. I don't know if he had one. Timothy played into that. Rudy's going to leave up all 4 mana. Now we go to an attack. Timothy will start by gaining life with Siren Storm Tamer. This should force some action on Rudy's side.
Right.
He will Lightning Strike the Diamond Mare, get a counter on the Runaway Steamkin. That's only 3 damage on Diamond Mare, however. And here's another Lightning Strike. And that's Wizard's Retort. That is huge.
Right, and now he has a Storm Tamer online, so it's quite easy to block for the Mare. The thing about Rudy's play, though, is he now has a 3/3 Steamkin left over, which will check the Diamond Mare down the line.
Well, something has to attack here, right? Otherwise, Timothy loses the Curious Obsession. And also, this Diamond Mare has 3 damage on it.
Right. Now you're almost forced into making the Diamond Mare attack.
All creatures attack with this guy's.
Yeah, you can attack with any creature. So I suppose you can shove with the Exclusive Maze and just throw that one in the garbage.
Yeah, and I don't even mind that play. Timothy's last card's Curious Obsession. So I guess my question is, do you want to put the Curious Obsession, the second one, on the Exclusion Mage first?
Given that it just trades, I don't love that. I guess you can just attack with both from here?
Well, then you just lose the Diamond Mare.
Yeah.
I think the thought is, and he makes this attack, is that he's -1 card no matter what. No attack and he loses the Obsession. Just Mage and he loses the Mage.
At least gets the Steamkin this way.
Yeah. So as gross as it is, I actually like this play from Timothy.
Yeah, so you didn't have additional resources to play with, so that is a very fair point.
And Rudy, I think Rudy just has to block. Taking this is pretty bad. And he's going to take it. So now I'm correct. I'll stand corrected. Timothy draws a card.
One of the reasons to take it is that once he gets the steam coming up to a 4/4, then it engages in combat against both of those creatures.
Steamkin down. Here's Rekindling Phoenix. Counters on both of them. This Steamkin card's real nice.
Another thing about it is the mono blue deck just doesn't have great individual cards.
Yeah.
So Hall drawing one card and going into a position where his battlefield is not very good on the following turn, I think Rudy's generally fine with that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if Timothy draws an island here, this is just a really bad board for him. He'll lose all his auras or all his creatures or something. Rudy, 2 cards left. One is a land. One is some sort of spell, not a creature.
You almost want to be able to just board off of Curious Obsession in this matchup, but the way Hall's deck is constructed, then he's really just leaning on Silvergill Adept against a Goblin Chain Whirler deck.
Now, there is Tempest Djinn in hand for Timothy. That's not ideal, as Rekindling Phoenix deals with it pretty well. Exclusion Mage will trade with Phoenix. Yes, Timothy just throws the card away. 2 cards away, actually. Here's Tempest Djinn. Timothy will gain a life. And Phoenix comes back.
Right. Tempest Djinn will be a nice one to throw a Curious Obsession onto if you got a window for that, because then you can actually attack into the Phoenix, maybe have a bounce spell for the token.
Shock on Siren Storm Tamer. And Ryan, what I'm just running into here is Rudy is playing Mythics and Rares, and Timothy is playing Uncommons, and it just feels like that's what's mattering here.
Right. And the synergies in the mono blue deck have just gotten worse.
Fight with Fire takes care of the Tempest Djinn, and here's an attack for 12. Oh, Timothy will go to 10. He chips back for 2, and he doesn't draw any blockers. He shakes the hand. Rudy Briksza, 2-0 is your winner.
Yeah, Hall's deck just doesn't have any haymakers in the 75. Once you fall behind, that disadvantage tends to be compounded over time, and there's really not much that you can do about it from there.
So, 2-0 for Rudy. Teammate Kyle Boggemes is up a game. We're going to move over there, see where they're at. One more win from Kyle, and that'll wrap it up.
It's been a minute since I've seen a good old Jeskai Control versus Grixis Shadow matchup.
How'd you feel about the matchup? I know you played Grixis Shadow for a while.
It's really involved.
I'd expect that. There's a lot of Snapcaster mages.
If the Shadow player doesn't flood, I like their side of the matchup. The Jeskai player is pretty good at making the game go along, though. The longer it goes, the more I tend to like the Jeskai side of things, which is, kind of how it goes with Jeskai Control.
And it looks like Kyle knows that one, too. He has 3 copies of Ancestral Vision. Looks like they've come in. His first few turns were spent with Search for Azcanta and Ancestral Vision. Now, Austin, his opponent, has gotten a Gurmag Angler down and looks like he's cast a Stubborn Denial so far. But Kyle's still a very healthy 18. I have to like how this is going for him.
Right. Didn't see the initial turns of the game, but Austin is still at 15, and it is important to really manage your life total against the Jeskai deck with the Death Shadow deck. In a lot of matchups, you very aggressively just damage your own life total. Jeskai is a deck that's really good at finding its lightning bolts, and if that's what the game about, can just really burn you out easily.
So is there a sweet spot you're going for? I mean, on turn 1, are you going to shock if you don't have a play?
If you start untapping with Death Shadows, then you start firing off your untapped duels, fetch lands, what have you. You just wait until you have a spot where it makes sense to damage yourself in almost every game.
Kyle draws a card, plays a land, and passes. Ancestral Vision is coming off suspend next turn. As Collective Brutality will be cast by Austin Courtney. In response, looks like a Celestial Purge from Boggemes. And it has to be Stubborn Denial on Courtney's side. And Dispel from Kyle. So counter, counter, exile. Board's clear. It's a duress for 2 Terminus. But that means we have 7 cards in graveyard for Kyle. He's about to resolve Ancestral Vision. I do not like the Grixis side of this at all.
And that's one of the issues for the Grixis deck you saw play out there. Austin had Stubborn Denial, which he'd love to use in the Ancestral Vision, but if you let the Angler get purged, then the Denial doesn't work on the Vision.
So, a mill and a transform of Search for Azcanta into Azcanta the Sunken Ruin. So Kyle will get that land. He'll get a huge grip of cards off Ancestral Vision. He'll have 5 after the draw step. And with Azcanta going every turn, it's a pretty good spot. Here's Jace the Mind Sculptor for more cards.
Looks like Austin does have an engineered explosives in his post-cyborg configuration. The idea is that can deal with search for Escanta, but he's been a little mana light, it looks like, in this game, and he never had a chance to leverage that.
Yeah, I agreed. There aren't that many threats, it looks like, that that Austin was able to produce. Kyle will Fate Seal with the Jace. Leaves it there and plays a Colonnade.
Right, yeah. Kyle's already up on cards. Getting the Jace out of Lightning Bolt range makes a lot of sense here. And going forward, he has to start activating his Con to the Sunken Rune. Maybe even start brainstorming on the following turn. And you're going to see his advantages snowball here. The Shadow deck, in matchups like this, has a really hard time fighting from behind. And honestly, just in general, its role is to try to keep the opponent from getting going or to be very aggressive in basically every matchup.
Your man from Austin is going to go for Colligan's Command. 3 at Jace and has Kyle discard a card. And Kyle accepts. He discards the Plains. At this point, he might even be able to win the race. Kyle does have Colonnade online. Fetch and Shock from Courtney will bring himself down to 12. Which means Shadows are now castable. And that's what it'll be, Death Shadow. It's a 1-1. Let's make the race a little more interesting.
Though everybody knows that Kyle still has Terminus in hand, and how about one off the top?
That seems. Let's do that. Then you can go back to work. You can hit with a Colonnade. Or you could just brainstorm and tap an Escanta.
Yeah. First step: get this Jace back out of Lightning Bolt range. I think activating the Escanta is better than the Colonnade here, because nothing can really go wrong if you start going up on cards in hand.
Pass. Kyle down to 17. And this one's getting pretty comfortable for Boggemes.
And here's that activation on his Con to the Sunken Rune. 4 looks. There's a Path to Exile. Now untapping with the Jace on 5, Boggemes can start to brainstorm if he likes. So he's just going to be aggressive with the Jace, actually, which is fine. He has the Escanta to the Sunken Rune, so he's already generating a card advantage.
Yeah, I feel like there may be arguments for one way to win over another. You can Colonnade, you can Jace, you could Jace the Shaheen Sarani school would be to just brainstorm and use Escanta until you're discarding to hand size. Some people will Fate Seal out, some people will hit with Colonnade. I think they're all pretty
it's the testament to the power level of Jace the Mind Sculptor. It's one of those games where I think as long as it's a legal ability, you can activate Jace at random for the rest of the game and probably just win.
Yeah.
Now, the Escanta to the Sunken Rune is doing some of the work in this game, but even still, Jace is showing its strength here.
When it was in Standard, I think in one of our articles, Patrick Chapin had a really good observation. He had said about Jace is that it is one of the most difficult cards in that it is very hard to pick the correct ability, to always pick the correct ability. But the nice part about it is that if you pick the second best ability every time, it's still the best Planeswalker they've printed.
Right. That holds pretty well true today.
Yeah. It's hard to get right, but you don't actually have to.
Right.
And more Escanta for Boggemes. Courtney just has to watch as Kyle gets a second Cryptic Command in his hand. Things are pretty grim, but Austin knows that with this game with it comes the match. Jace looks like going toward ultimate. It's up to 11. That's a -12. That will end things.
I have a bingo square for Jace the Mind Sculptor Ultimates.
Really?
Doesn't really ever happen.
That's really unfortunate because that's a hard one to get.
Right.
And Lossett's up a game. That is not going to matter, but he is up a game.
Yeah, his team's doing all right in this match.
Kyle has Cryptic, Path Snapcaster, Jace on 13, some lands.
Is that all?
You know. Leaves the card on top of Austin's deck.
Yeah, it was a Thoughtseize.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
That card's beatable.
You can only Thoughtseize one of these Cryptics.
Right.
mean, cost and fetch shocking down to 7. With that Thoughtseize, I mean, he died a Colonnade, too.
Sure.
Like, can't even cast it. There's Snapcaster Mage.
I don't know. Counter draw, whatever.
Cryptic.
It's going to make me cast him.
Didn't even look at the graveyard first. Just like,
Yeah,
counter.
whatever. It can attack Jace.
I don't know. What do you find? Whatever, counter it.
Yeah, you're casting a spell? All right, I have responses.
Does the spell deal with Jace? Probably not.
Yeah, I like that the answer is not even yet. It's like, kind of.
Yeah.
It has effects that impact the relative loyalty of Jace the Mind Sculptor on the immediate turn that follows.
Austin Sands Thoughtseize, Liliana, Engineered Explosives. None of them are going to stop the Jace Ultimate. And when those become the only deck cards in his library, then he's going to not have any outs to stop Jace.
Oh, man, I love this. Alex Williamson is just like, why don't you play this card? It's like, oh, my teammate thinks he has advice for me.
I would, oh, man, that would tilt me. When my teammate was like, hey, I think you played this card wrong, I would just look, I would lose it. I just, man, go play your legacy. Look.
I like it, yeah.
Go away.
Finish your match. I like this. He Thoughtseize into a hand that he mostly knew about because of his cut to the Sunken Rune and then conceded. Get that one last look.
A perfect